Dudes! Bill and Ted Face the Music is most excellent! Oh man, this movie retained a big smile on my face, ear to ear, primarily because of the magic chemistry that Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter still retain after how long has it been? The last Bill and Ted movie, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, came out in 1991, so that's what? 29 years after the fact? And yeah, they still got it, man.
Be excellent to each other. And party on, dudes.
It's so amazing to see these, how old is Keanu? 56 years old, and Alex Winter is 55. When Keanu was first cast in the role of Ted Theodore Logan in 1988, the movie came out in 1989, he was only 22 years old, or thereabouts. And he was, as anyone who's seen, Alex Winter as well. Alex Winter is like a year younger, so he was 21 when he was cast as Bill S. Preston Esquire. Anyone who has seen those original two movies knows is they were pretty perfectly cast in those movies, and they, I think, are the primary reason why they are so damn entertaining even to this day, at least in my opinion. The first one, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, I thought was just okay. It was funny and inventive, very creative for its time, but it was actually Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey that is an absolute favorite of mine. That movie is just bonkers. It goes to weird places that I didn't expect at the time, and it is just funny from like beginning to end, and I can still say that it's still one of my favorite comedies to this day. And because I love Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey so much, it kind of elevates my view of Excellent Adventure even more. So, if you loved Keanu and Alex in those first two movies, you're gonna love them in this one because they are extremely consistent as Bill and Ted in this one. They're pretty much exactly the same. They're not in their early 20s anymore. Again, like Alex Winter was 21 when he was cast, and Keanu Reeves was 22. And now Keanu's 56, and Alex Winter is 55. So they're not exactly the same. You see they're like old. But that is part of the story, is that Bill and Ted are in their 50s in this one, or thereabouts. I don't think they say their exact age, but I think you just assume they're pretty much what Keanu and Alex's age is. It's like the only chance that no one ever thought would ever be real, that they would ever make a third one ever. Because, like, again, the last one came out 29 years ago, and it's been so long, and people just eventually just gave up hope that this third one would be a real thing. But yeah, like about a decade ago, there were like rumors and things like that a third one may still happen, and here we have it. The story is very ambitious, and like the first two, very creative, very weird, very unique. So we see Bill and Ted, they're like about 50 years old in this story, and they still haven't saved the world.
A song created by Preston Logan, performed tonight, will save reality as we know it.
They still haven't changed the universe in all of this. Now, it is stated in this movie, slight spoilers, that the major events that the Wild Stallions created during the credits of Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey do still happen. Like, air guitar clears up smog, and they play the Grand Canyon and all of these cool and weird and awesome things. Those are mentioned in this movie, and therefore they're still canon. I was really confused going into this movie, because after seeing the trailers and seeing that they're like still sort of losers and like they didn't go anywhere, but they're already 50, I was like, but In Bogus Journey, they accomplished so much after the Battle of the Bands. What happened? Did they retcon that? And they didn't. It's just that after that, they just, like many celebrities, they just fell into obscurity like decades after the facts. And true to character, they're still trying their best to do what they believe is right. And they know that they haven't created the song and united the universe and all of this, all time and space. So they're still trying to make that song and still trying to be relevant. How they do that is like you see in the trailers, they're ripped from their timeline, and the elder in the movie tells them that they have a time limit. Very much like the first movie, that they have a very strict time limit, that they have to create this song fast. Otherwise, all of reality will rip itself apart and everything will cease to exist. They decide to steal it from themselves, and this is like where the movie goes into its creative stride. It becomes extremely creative, extremely unique, extremely funny, where Bill and Ted have to go years into the future to try and see which selves of theirs has created the song. And man, they meet all sorts of weird versions of themselves. And I kid you not, every version of themselves that they see is even freakier and weirder and more unique than the last, and even funnier than the last. And it's amazing. They're still continuing that joke from the first one where they meet themselves. And again, when they meet themselves the first time in Excellent Adventure, they're normal, right? They're still themselves because it's just a few hours into the future, right? And then in Bogus Journey, they flip that concept on its head. They meet themselves, but it's evil robot us's. Here, it's still themselves, but like apparently, depending on the future, there's some weird shit that happens to these two folks years down the line, and you see some glimpses of that in the trailers, like their prison selves. Those are hilarious. The first time I saw those us's in the trailers, I lost my goddamn mind because I knew this movie was gonna go for it, man.
How'd you like our song? It's a little on the dark side, but you know, that's cool.
And one version of their us's that they do meet really hits it in the feels, man. And I love that part of the movie. I didn't cry, but it did almost bring me to tears. It was such a sweet moment when they meet a very specific version of themselves in the movie, and it was great. It was very dramatic and very touching, especially if you're very familiar with the characters from the very beginning. And I loved it, and it just proved the depth of this movie, that it's not just another weird and wacky and crazy adventure to laugh out with. It was also a movie that had genuine heart and story that could connect with you and could even bring you to tears if you felt that closely to the characters. All that is excellent, but it's not all amazing with this movie, unfortunately. The movie, unfortunately, has too much going for it. It has too much story in the limited time it has. And how long is this? It's not a very long movie. It's like an hour 20. It's exactly an hour and a half, including all of the credits. It has way too much story in it for that particular runtime. So the main story, of course, is the one concerning Bill and Ted that I just related. And there are two more stories that occur in the movie, one of which you all know from the trailers, which concerns their two daughters, Thea and Billy.
Yeah, I wish there was some way we could help them out, you know?
Yeah. But how?
Both their daughters are also pretty perfectly cast in this one. Bill's daughter, who is played by Samara Weaving. Yeah, Samara Weaving plays Theodora Thea Preston. She's Hugo Weaving's niece. She's just okay as Bill's daughter. I mean, she's not bad. Again, I said that both of them were pretty perfectly cast. But she doesn't truly stand out in the role, unlike her partner in this, who is Bridget Lundy Payne, who plays Wilhelmina Billy Logan, who is Ted/Keanu Reeves' daughter. Bridget Lundy Payne is just, she's just perfect for this particular role. You just completely buy that she is the daughter of Ted Theodore Logan. But their story feels a bit rushed. because their story has to deal with them going in time and creates the perfect band to help their dads create this perfect song that will unite all reality and things like that.
Hey, you want to be in our band?
So they go through time and all this to try to gather the best musicians that they can. And their story just, again, it feels very blatantly secondary to their dads, and feels kind of rushed and therefore not nearly as interesting. But the biggest offender here is that there's even a third story in this movie, and it concerns the princesses, the babes, their wives that first debuted in Excellent Adventure.
Your wives suggested couples therapy. Do you think that this is what they had in mind?
Definitely. I mean, we're a couple of couples, right?
Their story feels just straight up incomplete. And it's weird because the beginning of their story has a very major impact on both Bill and Ted and impacts their adventure in a major way. And yet, they go off on their own adventure, their own story, and it's extremely unclear what exactly they go through and how they reach the conclusions they do at the end of the movie when they return from their own excellent or bogus adventure. We don't know because we don't really see it. We just see them pop up here and there, and then they kind of just explain what happened to them really quick, exposition-like at the end. And I'm like, what? So I feel that could have been executed / written in better. I really feel that this movie deserved maybe another half hour to clear up those two other storylines. It's 90 minutes, clearly was not long enough for the scale and scope of the movie that they were going for. Also, death is kind of disappointing for me.
Hey, Death.
Why, if it isn't a wild stallion.
It's amazing that he is back in this movie, that they managed to work in hell and his character again, and even get the exact same actor from Bogus Journey to reprise the role. But his story arc in this one is just not that interesting, and I feel that it was resolved way too quickly and way too conveniently. Like, he struck me as just being there, just to be there, just because they managed to get the original actor to sign on. So that's unfortunate. So Death's appearance here is kind of 50-50 for me. His story is kind of uninteresting for me, but I just love the fact that he is here in the first place, which I can't say for another favorite of mine from Bogus Journey, which is Station! The two Martians that were in Bill and Ted are completely absent here, although they are homaged if you keep an ear and eye out in the movie. And that was it. And I was like, I really wanted them to appear in like a bigger capacity in this one. But again, the movie is already stuffed as is, so I sort of understand why they didn't have room for the awesome Martians anymore. And then there's this one weird thing that I sort of really dislike in this movie, is that Ted's dad, Captain Jonathan Logan, played still by the great Hal Landon Jr., still acts exactly the same as he does in Excellent Adventure, the first one from way back in 1989, where he looks down upon his son for being like a nobody or whatever.
Bill, Ted, enough of the delusions. You didn't time travel, and you didn't go to heaven and hell.
Which doesn't track for me because, again, Bogus Journey and the stuff that happens in the credits of Bogus Journey are canon. You know, so he has this thing, Ted's dad, in this movie has this thing where he tries to convince Ted that all of the adventures that he speaks of are just some sort of dumb hallucination that he suffered through. But I just can't believe that someone can actually believe that when Battle of the Bands was broadcast through the whole world and there was some crazy shit that happened there. Like, you clearly see Chuck De Nomolos time travel in the booth, and like There's like teleporting guns and things like that, you know, and other magical stuff. But okay, fine. You don't believe that Denomalos is from the future. How the hell do you fake the two Martians and the good robot us's? And Death. Death is like a legit part of the band, and he's like Death for real. So there's a lot of fantastical stuff at the end of Bogus Journey that sort of redeemed those two characters, that they proved to the world essentially that they weren't just these two dumb and crazy teenagers, that they were actually legit, and all of the stuff that they were going through that is seemingly impossible, they have proof. And they continued on after that with these fantastical things for like at least another decade after the Battle of the Bands in Bogus Journey, right? So why does his dad act towards him this way? It doesn't track for me. It just feels forced, just so his dad can be the same dad that he was in Excellent Adventure. And I kind of didn't like that. I was like, why? It feels way too forced. The last thing that I want to talk about that I thought wasn't that amazing overall was the ending. And I believe I feel this way primarily because I'm spoiled that Bogus Journey, one reason why Bogus Journey is one of my favorite comedies of all time is the ending. And that epic ending to the Battle of the Bands with Kiss's God Gave Rock and Roll to You is just one of my favorite movie moments of all time. I guess it was just impossible to live up to that ending from the previous movie. So this ending, compared to that, despite the fact that they're saving literally all of reality, all of time and space simultaneously in this movie, just does not live up to that ending. So maybe it's just me, but the movie, the ending in this one just felt kind of flat. And was sort of disappointing to me. But it wasn't terrible. I believe I like this movie a bit more than Excellent Adventure. Like I said, I think Excellent Adventure is just okay. And I think this one is just better than that. Better than okay. And therefore, it's a 7 out of 10 for me. Definitely better than okay. Definitely a very good movie to its core. But again, it has a lot of problems. It tries to stuff way too much in its limited time, and not everything sort of clicks. Although, man, Bill and Ted themselves and their other us's are fantastic. And again, if you love the first two Bill and Ted movies, you will absolutely love this one. I highly recommend it for you guys. And for everyone else who hasn't seen the other two Bill and Ted movies yet, I highly recommend you do watch the first Bill and Ted movies before watching this one, because this movie kind of depends on those first two. You kind of won't understand a lot of the story and a lot of the jokes and things like that, a lot of the characters, if you never saw the first two. So I would highly recommend, if you've never seen any Bill and Ted movie, do not start with this one. Watch the first two first, then watch this one. That's going to be a fun trilogy to watch back to back.
Be excellent to each other and party on, dudes.
But what did you guys think? Did you love Bill and Ted Face the Music? Did you hate it? Let me know down below in the comments. We can talk about it there. And this has been Asian Action Actor. If you like my review of Bill and Ted Face the Music, please click like down below and subscribe to see more of my awesome content. And while you're here, you might want to see the other movie reviews that I have already done on my channel.